Thanks for staying with us for another exciting segment of the DMZ America podcast.
Thrilling.
Ted Rall from the left.
Scott Stantis from the thrilling right.
So, Scott, I was amazed and appalled. You and I have talked previously about how unpleasant Ron DeSantis seems. And this piece in the Washington Post puts a whole new, shines a lot of light on part of why that might be. So it turns out that Ron DeSantis was a Guantanamo torturer. In 2006, he was a JAG, 27 years old. He's bragged about this service. He used it to run for campaign when he campaigned for governor of Florida. He was like, his ads showed him in his white uniform with his cocky smile, and he's like, he took on the terrorists. I mean, of course, there hardly ever were any terrorists at Guantanamo. The vast majority of these so-called highly dangerous people have been cleared by the Pentagon, not exactly a bunch of socialists over there, as basically being innocent. And they were just mostly, for the most part, people who were sold.
Well, and it was the whole thing about Guantanamo that drove me crazy, and again made me an outcast from the right wing, was that they said we can't try them in American courts; they might get off. I go,
that would mean they're innocent.
Yes, aren't we fighting for our system of government, our system of our moral system, which is reflected in our laws? So yes, we should be trying them in courts of law, and I mean, just the blowback from that, as you know.
Yes.
I don't fear. I happen to like our checks and balances. I happen to like our legal system. I happen to think that, it's the intent, if not the actual execution, is admirable. But my God, Ted, I mean, and I love how he stood up to terrorists. He stood up to terrorists. Of course, they were chained to a chair, but he stood up to them from across a room.
That's right. It's like he wasn't exactly in Helmand province,
No, he wasn't kicking down doors in caves. He was actually like sipping mimosas in Guantanamo.
Toro Boro, in the Starbucks canteen at Gitmo. What a hero! But. So the allegation is, well, I mean, here's the thing. It's no longer an allegation because effectively he made his first statement about it yesterday, in which he did not deny the fundamental truth of the Washington Post accounts. And basically, as a JAG, he wrote himself in his book that he was asked, what should we do about these hunger striking detainees? And he's like, no worries, you can force feed them. So he gave legal advice and legal cover. And then they were like, okay, so we'll force feed them. Because I think it's so funny. It's even though we have murdered and raped detainees at Guantanamo, somehow it would be bad if they died by starving themselves. That would be a bad look. So anyway, they were worried about that. They were like, you can't kill you, we'll kill you. And so
let me be clear too, the period of which he gave them legal cover to do these things is roughly the same period where the Attorney General of the United States told the then President Obama that it's okay to torture in people, that's totally copacetic under our system if we feel there's a threat. Also, that they could, don't forget, folks, it was also ruled that the President of the United States could kill anyone, including American citizens, on American soil if they felt they were a threat to the United States.
Yeah, that was Eric Holder who said the thing about killing an American, using drones to kill Americans on American soil. He told Congress that. I'm pretty sure though that it was John Ashcroft who was Bush's Attorney General. Okay. This happened in 06 and 07. So
okay.
Bush. But I mean, the point's taken. Look, Guantanamo is still open, so this is a bipartisan effort. And even though the population has dwindled dramatically because pretty much no one there had done anything wrong, they are, it goes on. So anyway, the point is that he said he gave the okay, according to himself, for force feeding. And there are eyewitnesses, including fellow officers, as well as former inmates who were force-fed and recalled him smirking at them while they were being tortured. And force feeding is considered torture by the International Committee of the Red Cross and by various international observers and UN bodies and so on. It is not permitted under international law. So anyway, and apparently it was done extremely violently. There was the accounts are blood curdling to read. And so this
give some details.
Well, basically they shove a rubber tube up your nose. It has a metal sleeve attached to it, and then they jam that down your throat, and then they pump liquid food through it at high speed. So basically, it's sort of like a form of waterboarding, and it cuts up your esophagus, your sinuses, your nostril, and your throat. So you bleed a lot. You're choking on your own blood as well as the food that they're shoving down your throat. Literally, basically, they're treating you like like a goose being fattened for foie gras. It's torture. It's heinous, monstrous. And anyway, he bragged about his role at Guantanamo over and over again in his books, at public appearances, in campaign appearances. And now this Washington Post story has finally forced him to understand that maybe not everyone thinks that's cool. But he's certainly, in Florida, it played very well, but with the Republican base, but that might not scale nationally very well. But the thing is that Trump hasn't had anything to say about it, because obviously Trump doesn't care about torture. And, aside from the Washington Post, which did yeoman's work on this story, no other media organization has really picked up on it. They have picked up on his reaction to it. But basically, this does not seem to be something that's capturing the imagination of the American people. People don't really know about it.
I think even if they know about it, Ted, I'm not sure they care.
I think you're right. My mom used to say that. She said, like, "Are you kidding? Those are brown people. No one cares." And
yeah,
I was like, "You are so cynical." Now I'm like, she was so right.
I'm not sure if it's brown people, if it's just, if we perceive anyone to be a criminal. I mean, look at the criminal justice system in America. Look how we incarcerate people. There's absolutely no effort at all for rehabilitation, for bettering these people. Very little, if any. We like to lock them up, and if they're inhuman, you say the conditions are inhuman. People don't care. In fact, they say, good, they're bad guys. They shouldn't be treated humanely. I'm going, well, okay, then you're just going to make more bad guys and worse bad guys. And with the terms of Guantanamo, it's always been, for those of us who believe in libertarian and social liberties, civil liberties rather, it's always been.
I mean,
well, yeah, there's that.
I mean, you have a right to a speedy trial. It's like literally every conceivable abuse of human rights has been done there. They're not allowed to communicate with their families. They don't get the same rights as a convicted mass murderer in the United States. They are force-fed, they're beaten up, they're raped, they're subjected to harsh interrogations. They were waterboarded. They were put into barrels full of biting insects. They were buried alive in coffins. I mean, they were driven to suicide or beaten to death, depending on who you believe. I mean, it's a nightmare. And the fact that this thing is, I mean, who the hell is the United States to be lecturing any other country on human rights, as long as that piece of shit place is open? And no place, and no one who's ever served at Guantanamo voluntarily should be walking free. I mean, I think it's terrifying that Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida. Forget about potential future president. I mean, he's the governor of a big state. Are you kidding? This man's he's a psychopath. He should be in prison for the rest of his life for public safety.
not quite sure about that, but I do think anyone who would volunteer to do that, there's clearly something wrong with them, right? I mean, that just anyone who says I want to go and torture people,
Yeah.
there is something wrong with you. I mean,
Yeah.
can we all agree? Can we agree on this one?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not you and I, but I mean, just everybody,
Right.
like as a species. Can we just say, if someone says, I really want to go, I want to tie a guy down and just take a power tools to his nuts. I just really do. Is this someone who you're going, that's an American patriot?
Right. I want that guy to decide whether we go to nuclear war or not.
Yes, absolutely.
I trust that guy to do the right thing.
But I guess the $1 million question is, and I know what my answer is if this story gets legs, and it sounds like it's not, but let's presume for a moment anyone brings it up. Does it change the alchemy of this race at all? I don't know that it does.
I don't think it does.
I mean, I think it makes it more appealing to Trump supporters because this. Don't forget, Donald Trump's the guy who was talking to the cops, so the police association, and said rough up the guys and run their heads into the top of the cars and all that.
Yeah.
So torture not such a big issue with them or that voting bloc. But I'm thinking in a general election, does it say anything? It doesn't. I mean, I really don't think.
Well, here's the question: do you think if he were the nominee in a general election, do you think Biden or Harris or some other Democrat would bring this up?
I would hope they would, but they won't. I mean,
and I don't think they will either, because then DeSantis has a really easy comeback. President Biden, did you vote for when you were in the Senate while I was there? Didn't you vote for the appropriation to keep Guantanamo going?
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. Yeah. You're making me very sad.
Sorry, I mean, I'm sorry. The only conclusion that you can draw from this is that the United States is morally depraved, that our citizens have lost their moral compass. They have no sense of the most basic sense of ethics or decency. And it is gross beyond belief and disgusting beyond belief. I mean, here we are talking about, let's compare this to stuff that like Trump did. Hush money to a porn actress. Sorry, that's not quite up to the level of torture. Stole classified documents when he left office. Not up to the level of torture. January 6th, not up to the level of torture. Sorry, it's just not.
I think that's apples. That's tomato for me right there. You're just trying to overturn elections pretty bad.
It is really bad, and I agree with that. And I don't see any contradiction between those two statements. It's really bad, and torture is even worse. I mean, it's absolutely one of the worst things you can possibly do. I mean, if you're convicted of murder and you tortured your victim to death, you will be viewed differently by a judge and jury than if you just shot them in the head. Torture is really bad.
Okay, we can agree on the torture being bad. we can do this.
That's where we are, Scott. All right, so we're going to come back and we'll talk about the sensitive issue of reparations.
It's just an issue of race. When did that ever get to be inflammatory in this country, Ted?
Yeah, but at least it's two old white guys talking about it, so it's going to be fine.
Yes, no problem.
Stay tuned as we cancel ourselves.